the Labour Party and the future Prime Minister, Jeremy Corbyn.
Good afternoon, Telford. I was utterly determined to get to Telford at some point during this election campaign. This is where I grew up. This is where I learned the values of communities coming together to achieve something good and better in our society. Thank you, Telford, for being here today. Corbyn, if you could just help me a minute, hold that. You hold that. Okay. I'll hold this. Right. Coldip, manifesto for the many, not the few. Coldip, win in Telford. Dylan, win in the Wrekin. We'll do it. Julia, Labour for Ludlow to win. Laura, win in Shrewsbury and win for our ages. We're nearly the end of this election campaign and we've done dozens and dozens of events all over the country. And you know what? Everywhere we go, the crowds get bigger. People are determined to show that this election can be won by Labour, but we're also offering something very different to the Conservatives. We're offering hope, they're offering something else. And last night in Gateshead, where there was a rain throughout the rally, we had 8,000 people on the banks of the Tyne. Both Newcastle and Gateshead came together. That's actually quite an achievement, you should think about that. You say I can't bring people together? And I've just been reminded behind me, it's about bringing Shrewsbury and Telford together. Is that okay? And as one who was once secretary of the Young Socialists in Shropshire, I fully understand the need to bring Shrewsbury and Telford together. And we come together because we want a decent national health service for all of us. And I'm utterly fed up with the way the Tories try to divide us when we should be united. John Ashworth and I have discussed the situation facing the health service in Shropshire. The first thing John will do when he becomes Secretary of State for Health is suspend the sustainability and transformation plans, look again at the whole thing and ensure there are A&E departments covering the whole country. Because our health service is not up for sale, not up for negotiation, it's got to be there for all of us, for all time, free at the point of view. But this election is about our future. It is about the future of our children. It is about the future of our society. Our manifesto, which one of our candidates will kindly hold up now, maybe all forward, thank you very much. Our manifesto title, for the many, not the few. And that's exactly what it means and exactly what we intend to do. The future of our children is at stake in this election. I just had word of a school in London that is cutting the hours of the school day because they can't afford to stay open the time needed to teach the children. I'm getting reports all over the country of head teachers trying to hold collections amongst parents to fund the teachers' salaries. I'm getting reports of secondary heads cutting subjects and reducing the opportunities of our young people and our students. If we're serious about a prosperous future for all, you've got to start with the children. And that's why the first thing that we're doing for children is in our manifesto that under a Labour government, all children from the age of 2 to 4 will get free preschool, childcare, nursery places for all of them, irrespective of their background or political income. And people say to me this is expensive, at around £4.8 billion per year. I say it's an investment for all of our children for the future. Because those very early years growing up together is something that is very, very important. And for the primary school children, at the moment, is that a cry to want a nursery place already? Very early on. Yes, give that child a nursery place immediately. For the primary schools, we're doing a number of things. One is to change the funding formula so schools don't go through this horror of trying to decide how big a class they can cope with, how many children you can pack into a classroom, how many teachers to get rid of, and how much money you can raise to the parents. Because it's completely unfair. If you ask the parents to pay, if they've got a lot of money, maybe they'll give some money. If they haven't got a lot of money, they won't. If they're in a poor area, they won't be able to do it. What happens down the line? Schools in richer areas get better facilities, schools in poorer areas don't. I want every child to get a decent school and every child to get a decent education. And hungry children don't learn. The Conservatives had a limited process of free school meals in primary schools. They decided to get rid of that, but they're not terribly good at maths, and they decided they would fund school breakfasts very generously. We think their school breakfasts are going to cost about 7 pence each. I don't quite know how many Rice Krispies you get for 7 pence, but it's not a lot. And so we're serious about this, very serious about this, and again, it's expensive but well worth doing. We're going to provide a free school meal for every primary school child in every school, eaten together, taken together, as part of that whole concept of children growing up together and achieving together. School life is, of course, important. But it's important to learn, it's important to develop English, maths and all the other crucial and key subjects. But it's also about the imagination and joy and thinking, the way in which children express themselves. And one section of the manifesto that I'm very, very proud of is that Tom Watson and I have put in a commitment of a pupil arts premium in every school so that every child can learn a musical instrument in school. Because learning music, creativity will help them in so many other aspects of life. That's the kind of offer we're making. And then as you go further through the education career, we need obviously the funding formula to change for secondary schools, and we want to strengthen the role of local education authorities and of our overarching National Education Service. But what this Tory government has done, and their Lib Dem coalition partners before, was to remove the education maintenance allowance, which meant fewer young people were going on to study A-levels, study B-Tech, study anything else because they felt they weren't being valued, didn't do it. And we will bring those back so that the EMA will be available for those children who need it. And then there's been the big debate about apprenticeships and university education. I was at a college yesterday in Durham, wonderful college, which is dealing with apprenticeships, good quality apprenticeships, mainly in that case in the building trade, others in many others. At their best, apprenticeships are absolutely brilliant. At their worst, they're not very good at all. We will make sure that all apprenticeships are effective, are good, the apprentices are properly paid, and they understand and get the skills they need for the future. So there is a real parity of opportunity in doing good apprenticeships or going on to university. But I was of a generation that effectively, had I wanted to go to university, would have been free. There were no fees, there was a maintenance grant available. It was free education. I don't think it's up to my generation to pull up the ladder on the next generation, which is why I've always been concerned about the barriers to university education. And now that fees are generally £9,000 a year, the number of students from poorer families and working class communities applying is going down. Their opportunities are lost. And they're lost to all of us. Because if somebody wants to go to university and can't get there, they're angry because they don't become the engineer, the doctor, they don't become the skilled person they want to be. And we all lose because we lose that doctor, that nurse, that engineer. We as a society are poorer as a result. So I am very proud of the determination we put forward that we will end university fees and give and return to maintenance grants. Now these things are costly, so it does depend on what we do with the economy as well. And I'll come on to that in a moment. But I want to say something on health before I do. We founded the National Health Service. It was the Labour Party after the Second World War that, despite all the hardships and all the difficulties, had the vision that the principle of a society should be we do things together. Hence the National Health Service, healthcare free at the point of use for everybody for all time. But it's been cut. It's been affected by cuts. It's been affected by privatisation. It's been effectively by rationing. We now have far too many people waiting too long at A&Es, far too many people unable to leave hospital because the social care is not available for them. Far too many people stuck in corridors waiting for treatment. And our NHS staff, frozen pay for the last few years. In reality, they've had a 14% pay cut. I want to say thank you to all those who work in our NHS. Thank you for the contribution they make to all of us. And most people in the NHS work way beyond the hours they're paid for because they can't leave a patient behind, they can't leave somebody who needs care behind. That is the whole attitude and the mentality that's there in the NHS. And so we will ensure the NHS is properly funded and, as I said, suspend the sustainability and transformation plans to look at all those issues again. But there is also the question of social care. 1 million mainly elderly people waiting for social care packages that are not available for them. And the Conservatives proposing to fund social care by taking the value off people's property if they've got a property. And that means, in effect, that you would pay if you suffer from dementia, you wouldn't pay if you suffer from cancer, because you'd be treated by the NHS itself. We believe that principle is wrong. Therefore, we will put £2 billion a year straight into social care to deal with the existing crisis and establish a national care service running alongside the NHS, dealing with the needs of social care. If we don't do that, what then happens is that those who need social care get it if they're lucky, or rely on family or friends to provide it for them. That often means that women give up jobs and careers in order to care for those in great need. It seems to me that is fundamentally wrong, and I'm determined to achieve a proper social care service for the whole country, not this piecemeal approach where the Tories do a deal with Surrey but don't do a deal with anybody else. I tell you, for Tories, Surrey seems to be the hardest word. You're supposed to laugh at that point. And the other area of health that I want to mention, and I always do, is that of our attitude and treatment towards those going through a mental health crisis. We all know people who are going through a crisis and suffering from stress, and sadly the numbers of young people that go through a terrible crisis and not even end up taking their own lives. We as a people, we as a movement, can change our attitudes and can improve the public understanding of mental health, but it does require proper treatment. You cannot expect people who have gone for help and support to wait six months to get the therapeutic treatment they need and deserve. And so I've appointed in the Shadow Cabinet a minister dealing with mental health, and in government we will have a minister for mental health and social care to deal with these issues. Show our determination to deal with this. And so, the Labour manifesto offers real hope in those two areas. There's also housing. We launched the Housing Manifesto yesterday, where we cannot go on as a society not building enough, not giving enough security in the private rented sector, undermining local authorities who want to build council housing, and then say, we're sorry, there's a housing crisis. The symptoms of the housing crisis are those desperate people sleeping rough on our streets. But they are the symptoms of a much deeper malaise. Unless we build it properly in this country, we'll just have an ever-deepening housing crisis. It does require government intervention. It does require local authorities to build. It does require that people have the security of knowing theirs is their home for their lifetime and isn't going to be taken away from them. And so we will be investing in a housing programme for the whole country. This area, Telford, including Ironbridge and Coalbrookdale, was the very cradle of the Industrial Revolution in this country. So much of our society begun here. those that learned how to make iron, those original iron masters, those that built the iron bridge, and those that developed so many of the basic technologies which led to the Industrial Revolution in this country. And I'm always proud to know that I spent part of my life in this area, and that as a child I was taken to see the Iron Bridge, Bliss Hill, and all those other places. And so this area has a special place in the industrial history of this country. Telford Newtown came along, and a lot of new industries and jobs came with it. But it's also a question of the role that government and local authorities play in investment. So we will establish a national investment bank. That national investment bank will be regionally based for the whole country, so that there will be proper investment in transport infrastructure, railway links, as well as broadband and better road links, but also preparing us to invest in new and high technology. Because we have great strengths and great abilities in this country, but an awful lot of small companies cannot grow and cannot develop because nobody will lend them the money to grow. So we will be investing in those companies and investing in that infrastructure, so we have a sustainable growing economy. And as we leave the European Union, tariff-free trade access to the European markets to protect jobs here and indeed everywhere else in the country. These things do require a thought-out process, and I've indicated some of the areas that we're going to do things that will obviously cost more money. I fully understand and accept that. But I think we have to recognise that since 2008-9, when the financial crisis took place, a lot of people have suffered. A lot of people have seen in various parts of the country their schools underfunded, their hospitals overcrowded, their libraries closed, and a general malaise in public provision. Those with disabilities have often seen their benefits frozen or taken away from them. There's been a great deal of unnecessary hardship created. But at the other end of the scale, those at the top end have not suffered at all. There's a wholly disproportionate price paid for austerity by the poorest, at the same time as the gap between the wealthiest and the poorest in our society is growing ever wider. And so our manifesto is a plan which will improve the lot of the majority of the population, but it will also raise taxes for the top end. It will raise taxes on corporations up to 26%, which is actually less than it was in 2010, and there will be some other taxes, but 95% of the population will pay no more in tax, VAT or national insurance. This is a programme to make this country a fairer and more just place, a programme to properly fund our public services, and a programme that doesn't set young against old, that actually brings people together on the idea that communities together achieve the most. Look at the response. Look at the response in London and in Manchester in response to those horrific terrorist attacks. You don't turn on each other. You turn towards each other and bring people together in unity as communities. And this election is fundamentally a choice. Another 5 years of a Conservative government. I take that to no then to another 5 years of Conservative government. Thank you very much. I knew I could rely on Telford. What it will do is continue the underfunding of our NHS, continue the crisis in our schools, continue the crisis in our housing, and continue the unfair treatment of the majority of the population, whilst at the same time handing more tax giveaways to those at the top end. I think that is unacceptable. This election is about a choice. When we started this campaign nearly 7 weeks ago, well in fact 7 weeks ago today, I did my first event in Birmingham that day. People said, well, it's very obvious what the result's going to be. Really? 7 weeks on, thousands of people have come towards the Labour Party. Thousands have joined the Labour Party. And last Friday, something remarkable happened. It was the biggest ever day of donations to the funds of the Labour Party there's ever been. and the average size of the donation was £19, £19. So, and none of those cheques came from the Cayman Islands, the British Virgin Islands, or anywhere else. They were people just like you and me donating a bit to help this campaign, and I thank every one of them from the bottom of my heart for making that donation. But this election is about hope versus the alternative. Hope that our young people will get the education they need. Hope that we will be prepared to invest in our communities, and hope that we will invest in our cultural activities as well, properly fund music, properly fund theatre and arts, because life isn't just about the more difficult things in life. It's also about bringing communities together. Governments can't legislate for communities, they can only do that themselves. But if you provide the basis of that security, of knowing there is health, there is education, there is security in housing, and there is a determination to invest in the future for all of us, then people are more optimistic, they come together. If you look around this crowd here today, look to each other, we're ordinary folk, we're men, we're women, we're black, we're white, we're old, we're young, we're able, we're disabled, we've got all kinds of issues we face, we've got all kinds of issues we don't face. When we do things together, we're very, very strong. When we become divided, we achieve nothing, and nothing is improved as a result of it. And what's so exciting about this election campaign are the people that have come forward to say, yes, it's our society, yes, it's our future, yes, it's our community, yes, we can elect a government that will do things very, very differently. I'm very proud of the history of our party that did so much to bring about the basic social good in this country, bring about the National Health Service, bring about anti-discrimination legislation, bring about equal pay at work in 1970. But there's a lot more work to be done. There is still a gender pay gap. There is still discrimination within our society. There's still too many people with disabilities not getting the support that they need and often going through the indignity of failing a capability at work test and going through horrors as a result of it. A Labour government will do things very, very differently. What I urge you to do here today is recognise that winning in Telford, winning in the Wrekin, winning in Ludlow, winning in Shrewsbury, winning across this area is so important. I remember when we gained the Wrekin on the old boundaries in 1966 by 800 votes, because we all worked flat out to get the vote out that day. And what I say to you is, in the last 2 days of this campaign, yes, do all the door knocking, of course, to identify where our supporters are, and then be very polite in bothering them all day on Thursday until they go and vote. Be ever so polite until 9:30 at night, that is, when it really is time to get down there and vote. But until then, also have those conversations. Have those conversations about the kind of country we want to be, about the kind of society we want to be, about the kind of government you want. Would we do nothing when Donald Trump threatens to tear up the Paris Climate Change Agreement? No, not. I'd be very happy to join with any other leader in urging him to do something differently, because I want to save the planet, like we all do. And so, can I conclude by saying this? It's an absolute pleasure and honour for me to be here today in Telford. I'm grateful to all of you for coming here today. I'm grateful to all of you for your support for our party. And I ask you to do everything you can in these next 2 days to ensure that we win here in Telford, that Corbyn becomes your MP, that we have Telford as a Labour game, Telford as part of that majority, Telford as part of that Labour government which can deliver for the many, not the few. Thank you very much.